spinnerbait versus the underspin, how they're different, how they're the same, when to throw this one versus this one. We're going to talk about in today's Monster Bass video. So what's happening, guys, and welcome back to the Monster Bass channel. My name is Jeremy Francis. I run the channel and the page called Fishing the Lone Star. But today I'm coming to you from the Monster Bass channel to talk about spinnerbaits versus underspins, and when to throw each one. When I reach for one versus the other, how they're similar, how they're different, the gear to use, when to look to throw one versus the other, a couple of nuances between the two. I'm gonna cover it all pretty quick, but this should be a good video. Let's break it down. All right, so even though probably my number one lure to throw is this one right here, all right? This is the Castaic Jerky J Swim on a 1/4 ounce underspin is probably my number one lure to throw. I actually do love throwing this spinnerbait and catch a lot of fish with it. So let's talk about the spinnerbait first, and I'll come back to the underspin because it's the fall, or we're approaching the fall, and right now there's a lot of times when the spinnerbait is gonna excel over the underspin, and why I'm reaching for this right now because of the time of year. So let's talk about it first. All right, so first things first, this is the new blade burner. This is the new spinnerbait from Monster Bass. I have two versions in my hand right here. This one is the willow blade and that Colorado blade, and this one is the double willow blade. Of course, these are different colors, and this one has a trailer, but the primary differences are this one has willow Colorado, this one's double willow. One thing that I want to point out too that Monster Bass added here to these is a simple line keeper right here, right? Now I've taken it off of this one, right? So you can just simply slide it on, slide it off, but it helps keep your knot or your line tie right there versus sliding down this bar or towards the head of the lure. So you can keep it on, you can take it off. It's totally up to you, and probably depends on kind of how you're fishing the spinnerbait or where you're fishing this spinnerbait. If you're throwing in a lot of really heavy vegetation, grass, things of that nature, you probably want to take it off. It's one less thing to get snagged. If you're throwing around maybe some timber, rocks, laydowns, things like that, that's not going to impact anything. So you can choose to keep it on, you can choose to take it off, totally up to you. All right, now these both come in a 3/8 ounce or a 1/2 ounce. I primarily throw the 3/8 ounce more than the 1/2 ounce, but if you're fishing deeper water, you'd want to throw the 1/2 ounce. The reason why I like them right now in the fall is because these blades really kick and throw off a lot of flash, a lot of shine. And you know, Alabama rigs work, or A rigs work right now this time of year. But if you think about it, a spinnerbait is actually a mini Alabama rig because you have a lot of flash right here with one single hook. And you'll notice a very stout hook right here in this new Monster Bass spinnerbait. The head design also is really, I don't know if you can see that or not, there's some ridges right here that put off extra vibration in the water. But these spinnerbaits, you can burn them, they run true. You got a lot of flash here. I primarily throw double willow. However, the reason why you would want to reach for the Colorado blade is because this one's gonna give off more thump in the water. So if you have dirtier water or more stained water, you're gonna want the bigger thump and the bigger presence. That's where bass are feeding off of their lateral line and the vibrations in the water. So while this one's gonna be probably a little more visible with the flash, this one's gonna give off more thump, and bass are gonna be able to feel this one more in the water with that Colorado blade. So there's where you would choose one versus another. But overall, I've been really impressed so far with the design that Monster Bass came out with in this spinnerbait. I really like it a lot, like the head design, like the wire, the components are all very good, like the hook. And I try to keep my trailers pretty simple. I do not throw a trailer hook, although a lot of people do, but I do keep my trailers pretty sleek. This one came in a recent Monster Bass box. I don't necessarily want there to be a lot of action in the trailer because I have a lot of action up here, but I do want to keep this, you know, still, if I want to bulk it up, I can add a trailer. Otherwise, I just sometimes will just throw it with just the skirt and no trailer at all. Kind of a personal preference, totally up to you which one you want to go with. All right, now let's talk about a couple underspins for a minute, and then we'll break down underspin versus spinnerbait and which one you want to throw and when. I'm going to show you two different versions that I throw here in underspins. And you'll notice this one's a smaller version with an exposed hook. This one's a little bit bigger version with a weedless hook, right? So that hook is tucked in here into the swim bait. So I will use both, but different times of year, and I'll hold these up side by side. Right now in the fall, bass are keying in more on the smaller bait, all right? So sometimes I'll throw this one more in the fall. Most of the times of the year I will throw the 5-inch version, but you'll notice the willow blade on both those is about the same size, but a little bit smaller in nature than that of the the spinnerbait. Both these are a 1/4 ounce. Sometimes I'll throw a 3/8 ounce, but I like this one more on the tops of grass and around rocks. I like this one more in the thick of grass and lily pads, in and around timber, you know, swimming up and down through trees, laydowns, etc., just because it is more weedless versus the, my line got mixed up here, versus the exposed hook version, which this one presents. This is gonna have an easier hookup ratio. You don't have to set the hook as hard, obviously, because you have an exposed hook. Whereas this one, you need to jack them a little bit harder just to make sure you get that hook out of that plastic and into the fish's mouth. But there's a couple different spinnerbaits that I use. I'm sorry, underspins that I use right here. The Roadrunner, and then also just the 1/4 ounce underspin here, the weedless version. But there's the underspins that I pretty much use, just exclusively these two. All right, so now let's talk about spinnerbait versus underspin. They're very similar in nature. They give off a lot of flash, but when do I choose one versus another? Right now, I would say the way I primarily choose it is based upon the wind, all right? If it's a windier day and I want a lot of flash, and I know I'm seeing, you know, fish schooling around chasing bait, I'm gonna go with more flash, more presence, and I'm gonna go with the spinnerbait, especially if there's more wind. Say for example, 8-mile-an-hour wind or higher, right? If the wind is a little bit calmer, and even sometimes on you know, calm, slick days, I will then throw the underspin because there's one blade, so still a little bit of flash and draw, but not as much flash as this one here. So it kind of just really depends on the wind, on when I'm choosing one versus another, and sometimes the environment. For example, grass, lily pads, things of that nature. Although I'm throwing a weedless version of these underspin, the spinnerbait is probably the ultimate weedless lure, because if you look, when your blade is coming through the water, it is being totally covered. This is almost like a big weed guard right here. Your hook is being totally blocked and covered by this top wire. So the spinnerbait actually stays extremely, extremely weedless. And so for that, you can pretty much throw this anywhere. This one, the spinnerbait, is probably a safer bet to throw from the bank when you're bait fishing. You're gonna get it back more or hung up less than you would throwing the underspin, right? So it's not to say you can't throw the underspin from the bank. You definitely can. You just might get hung up a little bit more with this than this. This is gonna come in and around brush, grass, etc. a lot easier than this. The underspin, you might get hung up some, so be prepared to lose a few of these if you're fishing from the bank. But the spinnerbait's gonna come back the majority of the time if you're fishing from the bank. So that's one positive the spinnerbait has over the underspin. Now the gear that I'm gonna use on either one of these is pretty similar. So anywhere between a 7.5 gear ratio to 8.3 to 1. 8.3 to 1 might be a little fast, but a 7.5 to 1 gear ratio is what this one is here. And then I'm gonna throw somewhere between a 7-foot to a 7.3, 7.4, medium heavy to heavy action. Power rod, fast action, all right? So I'll repeat that. A medium heavy to heavy power of a rod, a fast action rod is what I'm gonna use. I'm gonna use 17 to 20 pound fluorocarbon. I'm not worried about the fish seeing the line with this particular lure, either the underspin or the spinnerbait, because quite honestly, I've got so much flash going on in the lure, in the actual blades of the lure, that I'm not worried about the 17 to the 20 pound fluorocarbon being seen, all right? So that's what I'm gonna step up to with the line. And quite honestly, with the exception of the with this underspin, this one you're gonna need to give a really big hook set. But if you're using the other, so if you're using the spinnerbait, all right, that has the exposed hook here, or you're using the underspin that also has the exposed hook, this is just a sweeping hook set, guys, all right? The hook set, you're just gonna point straight at it, set that spinnerbait down. The retrieval, you're gonna point straight at your lure. It's a steady retrieve. And when you get a bite, and you'll feel it on either the underspin with the exposed hook or the spinnerbait, which also has an exposed hook, you're not gonna jerk it really hard. It's just a lean and reel. Just reel and lean into your hook set, and you're gonna hook them just fine. You don't need to jack them really hard. None of that. It's not necessary on any type of exposed hook. That goes for a chatterbait, spinnerbait, or an underspin with an exposed hook. You just lean and reel, and the fish will set itself and will hook itself. Again, because of that exposed hook that's right there. You don't have any type of weed guard or weedless presentation that you have to get through. It's just a straight hook right into the fish's mouth. And then last thing I'll say is, you can see here, I've got, this one's a little more of a shad profile. This one's a little more of a bluegill profile. Really just match your hatch, right? So these spinnerbaits from Monster Bass come in many different colors. They've actually done a great job with all the different colors that they're bringing to us. So you can pick up, more of a bluegill color. You can pick up more of a shad color, a little bit of a more of a chartreuse, kind of like, one of them is more of like a fire tiger color. You got different options depending upon your water clarity, depending upon your bait fish that's present. Again, choose the double willow version if you are looking for more of kind of that schooling bait fish view or look to the bass. And if you're wanting more thump to draw in a little bit more vibration in the water from stained water, use the one with the Colorado blade. And again, if it's a little bit windier, I'm picking up the spinnerbait. If I'm fishing with a little bit less wind, I'm going to throw the underspin. Both of them are pretty weedless. Both of them come through grass really well, timber really well, etc. That's just when I'm going to use one versus another. Both of them are fantastic though. I would love to hear from you though. Which one do you use more, the spinnerbait or the underspin? Drop me a comment below, let me know. I always come back and read them, so please leave a comment. Would love for you to hop over to my page, Fishing Lone Star, or the channel here on YouTube. Give me a follow and subscribe there as well. But again, make sure you leave us a comment here on the Monster Bass channel. Make sure you subscribe right here to the Monster Bass channel, because we're bringing you a lot of videos to help you get out, learn how to fish, learn how to use different techniques, and learn how to catch some big fish right here on the Monster Bass channel. So stick with us, stay tuned, we got more to come.